Thank you very much for the introduction. When talking about digital education, two main arguments arises: access and quality of learning. I am a firm believer that digital education allow individuals to retrieve information, use learning material, and participate in remote learning anywhere in the world. However, access to these information is influenced by structural inequality that is driven by location, income, age, race, and even gender. And beyond this argument, we come up across another argument that goes: does technology actually improve learning experiences and learning outcomes, or do we actually need the traditional setting of a classroom, a teacher, and a number of students? So from there, we can start our questions. Dr. Sonia, given your background in curriculum studies and working at the foundation, what is happening in the classroom that cannot be duplicated, let's say, in digital education?
Well, thank you for having me first and foremost at this session. This is very relevant as a topic, and it's very important. I would say that the obvious one is social interactions, social cognition, which is about human thinking and how it relates with social behavior, the development of executive function skills, and those type of things are the obvious one. But I do think that it does go beyond that. And if you think about the World Economic Forum's top 10 skills of 2025, there's only 2 that are technical skills, 8 are transferable skills. So if we're looking at leadership skills, social influence, critical thinking in a safe space where individuals can assert their identity and learn how to learn and learn how what there needs to be for more purposeful attention within the digital space, those are critical. We have different kinds of learners. So to expect that a digital space will be a solution for all is just as reductive as in thinking as the idea that a classroom with 30 desks and 1 teacher and a chalkboard will serve all the needs of all the learners. The promise of digital learning is about the diversity and appropriate automation that it may bring, and then we're going to see a really positive disruption.
I totally agree with you. I mean, giving the experience we had through the pandemic, you can truly see the difference where we were at some point in a traditional setting of a classroom, and then in the next day, we just move immediately into a digital era without, let's say, any preparation to it. And you can immediately see that difference where I actually need my classmates to kind of understand a couple of more concepts. Would any of our speakers like to add anything to what Dr. Sania has just said?
I think she's absolutely correct. I mean, we're living in this new world, and I think there's a place for, what we're all referring to as hybrid learning. I don't think necessarily one is better than the other. They both have really tangible value. And certainly we saw that in the pandemic, where literally in less than 3 weeks, hundreds of millions of students went online. And in many cases, fairly uninterrupted, certainly on the university level. Colleges and universities around the world were able to pivot. They had great access to really quality online content. And so, it kind of proved out the model, what all of us in academia have been saying for the last 12 years, that, there is another way. It's not necessarily a better way, but it certainly has its fit. And because it's asynchronous and it's accessible 24/7 and it's accessible to everybody, no matter who you are, where you are in the world, your socioeconomic background, it provides real value.
I totally agree with you. And thank you so much for your input. Shireen, from your experience at Edraak, where you seek to improve access of education to the world, how do you think the digital learning is affected by the geo-demographic level misfits, and how can that be solved from your experience?
Well, very pleased to be with this distinguished panel, and thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts and learnings on this front. The pandemic has accelerated the need to rethink our educational systems and how we provide learning and share learning as a learning society. to help unlock human potential ultimately. So with our experience at Edraak, we now serve 5 million learners across the MENA region. During the pandemic last year, we welcomed 1 million learners within a short span of 6 months. And if that tells you anything, it tells you how much uptake and need there is for these opportunities that are delivered in flexible modalities that can really address the needs of the modern learner and promote lifelong learning. In terms of how can we work together on bridging the gaps in infrastructure, because access and connectivity are pretty much precursors to the ability to benefit these resources. And honestly, one stakeholder cannot change everything. We need an ecosystem and we need partnerships. We need public-private partnerships, civil society, donors to join efforts and come together to create this infrastructure where we build on each other's experiences, leverage each other's resources and networks. And we can really say that at this point in time, we cannot think of connectivity and access to devices as nothing less but a basic human right. It's research even shows how inequality on this front results in an educational gap in terms of achievement, but also inequality in income because it sets the trajectories of how you can monetize skills and so on. But with digital learning, really, we have a lot of opportunities that we can tap into, such as pivoting careers, helping youth access skilling and upskilling, further advancing their ability to gain the skills that are much needed in today's workplace, and also that are continuously changing due to rapid acceleration of technology advances and others.
I totally agree with you. Thank you so much, Serena, for adding that. Would anyone like to add anything as to how can we come around the inequalities when it comes to gender, race, or even location to have access to these information?
I mean, I would just say everything that she just said is correct. I mean, the beautiful thing about online learning, and certainly with platforms like we're all offering, is that it can be taken for free. And that same content that for hundreds of years was only available to a very exclusive group of people has now been made available to the world. I mean, if anybody on this call or listening, 20 years ago would have said, hey, Harvard and MIT are going to offer all of their in-classroom content for free online to anybody that wants access to it, people would have, laughed. And now that's a reality. And if you look at, the impact that Edraak is making and edX and the 160, partners that we have around the world, it's unprecedented. So, our goal is to provide access to anybody, anywhere, anytime that is interested in learning. And, I think she made a very good point that, the ability to try different disciplines and try different skill sets and find what's right for you, that was never available necessarily in the very strict linear, collegiate system. Now you can try and you can pivot, you can try something else. And again, it's content coming from the most renowned institutions and enterprises globally.
I completely agree with you, John. I mean, I'm a student at EDX, where I've just signed up for a course that teaches management under climate changes. And I completely agree. I mean, I am a PhD student, and even during this difficult times where in a general time, we would be busy in labs, but because of the shift into digital learning, I am now able, being at home, continuing with my PhD degree, but also learning other courses in the meantime, where I don't have to leave my campus, go to the other campus to attend a course for X amount of hours, and then rush back again to my lab to continue my experiments. And that's a really good point. Thank you so much. Back to you, John. I mean, we're hearing a lot about metaverses and Web 3.0. Yeah. And they're becoming really hot topic nowadays. So from your experience and let's say being a specialist in the global business development and your expertise in technologies and digital product, how do you visualize the future of education in this let's say, AI metaverse era?
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing. If you look at 12 years ago, what a typical course looked like. I mean, the first course on edX was from our founder in circuits and electronics. And I think it was done in his basement because he was trying to even, see whether people would be interested. And within the first week of posting that course, there was almost 250,000 people. But a lot of the initial courses were pretty static, talking head, maybe at a podium, maybe some graphics. But in this new world of meta and augmented reality and virtual reality, you talked about, because of the pandemic, having to, do some of your labs online, or even missing, some of that. I think that's all going to change. The world of technology and how it's going to expand and give opportunities, even remotely, is going to vastly change in the next few years. Technology can be both a challenge and a benefit. And I think in the case of online learning, it's going to be a benefit because so much of the content will be significantly enhanced, through meta, through AI, through machine learning, through, again, virtual reality. So you can actually, be inside an aircraft if you have to fix it, or be inside a lab and actually see how things go together. It's a very, very exciting time, and it's really going to provide a whole different dimension for the learners than they have currently.
I completely agree with you. And in multiple events that we hosted through UAE STEM in the Science Museum, where we brought a VR system where you can go through a satellite and see where the batteries are located, where these things are located. And you can see the interactions of people different where proceeding. Even if I brought them an actual Lego with the same inputs, they wouldn't proceed it in a similar way because they see it in space, they see it in location, they see it working or functioning the way we would want it to be. Thank you so much for your input. Shireen and Dr. Serena, would you want to add anything to what John said?
We are certainly living in exciting times with all these disruptions and advances in technology, bringing about an ample of opportunities, but also challenges. So I think we are faced now with critical questions on, how can we ensure ethical, inclusive and equitable use of AI in education, and how can education prepare students and youth and people in general to live and work in a world with AI and other technology. And ultimately, the question would become then, how can we leverage AI to enhance the state of education? And a lot of times when we talk about disruptive technologies, we think, okay, how can we adapt that to fit into the system we already have? But the question is really about how do you reinvent the long due to change system so that it's more adaptable to our needs today, promoting lifelong learning, like Dr. Sonia mentioned, higher executive functions where humans can even apply human skills that AI can, or at least for now, is unable to achieve for us. So I think we really need to think of this as an interdependent cycle where the different pieces of the puzzle come together. But one thing is for sure, that we cannot resist technologies, and we really need to open our minds and raise awareness about the advantages, and at the same time work together to address the risks and challenges that maybe intimidate some stakeholders from engaging with it.
I completely agree. I mean, it is a new, let's say, era. And I think all the teachers, the students, the institute, educational, public, and governmental need to kind of start training and learning these new, let's say, ways of dealing with these new technologies. As a closing remarks for each one of our speakers, what would you say the benefits of digital learning, starting with Shireen?
Well, I live the benefits of digital learning every day, both as a professional and a student myself. I'm now doing my master's at Huda, and it wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the opportunity of doing it online. It allows me the flexibility, the ability to stay with my family, where I live with minimal disruption, while also offering me the opportunity to engage with amazing professors in a learning community working in EdTech. And at the same time, I'm fortunate to witness the impact of digital learning on the lives of our learners at Edraak that we serve. The stories that we receive on a daily basis are heartwarming and inspiring, where people are saying that they had to drop out of college for one reason or another, but through online education, through open online education, they were also able to build skills and monetize them, pivot their careers, start their businesses, rekindle their passion for education, and pursue dreams that would not have been possible without the opportunity to access these resources. So digital learning is not a silver bullet for all problems we are facing in education, but it's certainly a vehicle through which we can definitely accelerate the way we help learners seize their potential through a life-changing education.
Thank you so much, Shireen. Joan?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to say because I think she said it very aptly. But digital learning clearly gives, everybody access. We have a saying, there's no back row, because the majority is asynchronous. People can better themselves in their lifelong learning endeavors. They can better themselves personally, from a business perspective, from anything that they're interested in. It's cost effective, it's time effective. And the fact that you have access to this incredible, wealth of content from leading institutions, and those same institutions are able to keep up in real time with the changes that are going on in the world, is such an advantage on so many levels. And people are just starting to wake up to the fact that they have that kind of access, whether it's to get an actual degree, an undergraduate degree, a master's degree, or even, again, just to better themselves professionally and personally. It's truly a gift that keeps expanding and will continue to expand, as the world also, changes so rapidly due to technology.
I completely agree. And thank you so much for your input. Dr. Sonia?
I do agree that there is so much potential, and the reality is that the fourth industrial revolution is simply normalizing technological advances, and we're all living right now and benefiting from the latest advances in the biotech industry. So we know that the protocols for humans were expedited due to the pandemic, and now it's just normalized, and we expect the same from education, where it's just going to be the new way of being. And so as we're looking at this increasingly digitalized and personalized way of learning, there are places like the Korea Advanced Institute of Technology that are already moving into creating a virtual campus in Kenya. It will be launched in 2023. It's 60 kilometers outside of Nairobi. And the feasibility study for this was done 5 years ago. And so this is not necessarily something that's new. It's just been slowly coming up. And so one of the reasons that it is doing so well in that case is that it's the institutions who are best equipped with the digital infrastructure and the human talent that is going to be really taking us to this next generation of education. And you mentioned the metaverse earlier, and I do think that we are moving fast and furious into that space, as we've all seen. But I'm going to share a caveat in a couple of them. And the first is educators need to be a part of creating the solution. So the South Korean example is a really good one. But I do think that we do have a situation where developers should stop looking at educators as interlopers to be replaced, and look at them as core experts who deeply understand human development and education. And so digital learning is a necessity to prepare students for the future of work. We're changing how things are going to happen. This is inevitable. But for this to be truly what you were just talking about, which was something that is accessible across all cultures and contexts, we have to deal with the disheartening truth that education is inaccessible for millions of children. 260 million young people were out of school in 2020. We're not even counting the 188 million children attending school without electricity. So this goes beyond a digital divide. This goes to a poverty divide, an energy divide. This means no fans, no lights, no heat. This is such a basic level of discomfort that they cannot access what these wonderful opportunities mean. So, we need to reach those vulnerable socioeconomic groups. And at the foundation, the Abdulla Ghurair Foundation for Education, we've been working hard, and we have been working with over 500 scholars in the online space to assure them that they will be able to access those opportunities that are being presented as fully accessible, but the reality on the ground is that they're not. And so I think that we do need to be careful as we move forward that we don't leave billions of people behind.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sonia, and thank you so much for our speakers. It was a great discussion, and I truly hope that some action would come out of these amazing discussions. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us.